Hello, and welcome to this episode of Simon Says, Let's Talk Business on Business RadioX. I'm your host, Al Simon with Sandler, and on this show, we talk with high-performing business professionals to sharpen our skills and learn new ideas and concepts and share best practices and get to know really smart people like our guest today, Chris Weissman with TopRight. So, everybody, listen carefully, take some notes, and look for Chris's contact information toward the end of the show. And as always, we'll conclude the show with a sales tip from me in our Ask Al segment. So, Chris Weissman with TopRight. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is not your first rodeo. You've done radio before.
I have been on the radio a couple of times.
Yeah? Okay. So, old hat. This is easy stuff. Yeah.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to have you. So, TopRight, y'all are. I love your line here that's on, I guess it's on your website. It says, we accomplish this, we'll talk about what this is in a minute, by crafting stories told with ruthless consistency. Man, I love that phrase. Ruthless consistency.
It's one we hear a lot and we say a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, well, can we start with that? Why do you do that?
Yeah, well, when you think about brands and great brands, what you tend to see is their messaging is fairly simple, it's clear, it's actionable, but it's told consistently. And I'll give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
I don't have to put a logo on an Apple commercial for you to know it's an Apple commercial. I could take you blindfolded in a car, walk you into a Starbucks, remove all of the green logos. You're still going to know you're in a Starbucks.
True.
And that's why those brands are so strong. Because what they do consistently. Their messaging is consistent. What they want you to feel is consistent. How they want you to think is consistent. And the execution is consistent. You look at other brands, and I don't want to disparage any brands, so I won't mention any, but there are some you'll watch a commercial. You say, oh, my God, that is just the most amazing thing, and you'll go buy it, and your experience will be horrific. And it's because they're marketing to you. They're not engaging you. They're not trying to build a relationship with you. They're trying to transact with you.
So the marketing message doesn't match up with the experience.
That's right. Great brands want a relationship.
Right.
Not great brands want a transaction.
Okay, well, that's really good. Well said. So great brands want a relationship, not great brands want a transaction.
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Wow, good point. All right, so obviously TopRight, and you're the chief marketing officer, and y'all are a marketing agency based here in Metro Atlanta.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. How long have y'all been doing this?
We've been around since about 2006, and We've continued to hone and craft what we do, as I think most agencies do.
Yes.
Our focus is primarily on business to business and government marketing. So we don't do a lot of consumer marketing. You're not going to see a commercial for Burger King or for Tide that we've created, but you'll see some things that are B2B or government related. Okay,
and obviously. You do a great job since you've been around in 2006, and your particular strength apparently is storytelling.
It is, yeah. It starts with storytelling, and it's really the idea of crafting a story that compels people to want to engage, and then taking that story and figuring out how do you execute it. And you used the term ruthless consistency, but how do you translate it into strategy, into media, and then into messaging that tells the story so that everyone not only hears the story, they feel the story and they live the story, and they want to be part of the story.
So you must spend a lot of time with your clients before you ever put out any kind of material, right? I mean, you really get to know them, what their story needs to be.
We do, and it really, for us, it doesn't start with the client, it starts with the client's customers.
Oh, really?
Because it's not, what we tell our clients is we have to understand the needs that they have, right? How do we fulfill their needs? What are they feeling? How do they want to engage you? Because the story has to be something that their customers are compelled by. Because as much as we as an agency want them to stay with us, they aren't going to unless their customers stay with them.
That's a great point. It's interesting because, obviously my company, we're sales experts, but I often get asked about marketing. I think people tend to lump sales and marketing together, but I mean, they're so far apart, really. They need to work together, but they're different. So in your mind, what is the role of marketing?
I think for marketing, it's really creating the need, right? I think about relationships between marketing and sales. I've got to sort of tee the ball up so that the salespeople can hit it. Using a golf analogy, I've got to be able to compel them to want to have the conversation. So my messaging has to be such that the prospect wants to pick up the phone and call, or when the salesperson calls, they know who we are,
right,
and are interested in having a conversation.
Okay.
So that it's not a cold call, and it's not one where the sales rep is having to regurgitate the marketing message. The prospect knows who we are.
So the brand itself has warmed it up in a way.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the role of marketing is to create that warmth for the individual conversations.
It is. It's also, when we talk about marketing for our clients and how they market themselves, it's getting them to stop thinking about marketing as advertising, right? Having pretty images or a slick message. It's really about shifting and pivoting and thinking about behavior. And so what we talk about is the movement of behavior, right? And it starts with, if I can't get someone to care enough to listen, then nothing else matters. So as a marketer, I have to get them to care enough to listen. If they already care enough to listen, I have to get them to listen hard enough to want to engage.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're willing to engage, then it becomes sort of a joint sales and marketing responsibility to get them to transact. And then marketing steps back in with user experience, et cetera, to get them to want to stay. And it goes back to what I said about transacting versus relationship.
Yeah.
If you get them to transact, it's wonderful because you've got money in your pocket. But if you get them to stay, you've built a reoccurring revenue stream.
Right. And I think there's a clue here based in your own marketing, because most marketing agencies call themselves marketing ad agencies, and you don't.
We don't. We don't, because the ad is a means to an end. The ad is a visual, audio, or pictorial manifestation of the story.
Mm.
But you can have the most amazing ads. Think about the Super Bowl. You see the slickest ads. You have no idea why you should care enough to listen,
right,
or want to engage.
Right.
It's just entertainment. And one of the things I learned early in my career is it's for sales, right? It's one of three things. I have to get people to either buy more often, or pay more, right? And if I have advertising that doesn't do any of those things, so behaviorally they've got to buy more,
right?
Psychologically they've got to want to engage more,
yeah,
right? I think a lot of people think, oh, I've got a really pretty ad. I get to go to France and collect a trophy at Cannes, and none of that really matters if your business doesn't grow.
But it's interesting that you talked about Super Bowl ads, because companies pay lots and lots of money for that time. But I know you're right, because my son and I were watching the Super Bowl one time when he was little, and he said, Dad, the beer commercials are the best commercials. But I never remember which beer it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because earlier in my career I worked for Sergio Zeman, who was the chief marketing officer at Coca-Cola and ran an agency called the Zeman Group. It was a consultancy. And he told stories about one of the most iconic ads of all time, which is, I'd like to teach the world to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an abject failure in selling more Coke. Everyone loved it. Everyone was singing it. Everyone replaced the word, whatever the word was, with Coke. But, it made people feel good, but it didn't make them behave any differently.
Yes.
So a lot of trophies sitting in a trophy case at Coke, but not necessarily a
Didn't
lot of
sell
buyers.
more Coke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't add any more new relationships. Well, that is interesting. And is that the biggest mistake marketers make? Is that they miss the reason for the marketing?
I think so. I think marketers get enamored with the glitz and the glamour of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And marketing is really about changing people's behaviors.
Mm.
If you think about the market, especially in consumer products, which I have a background in, people don't need another soft drink. People don't need another, kind of tape.
Yes.
Until you show them that they do.
Yes.
And so they're going to have to stop doing something and start doing something else. That's what the advertising is intended to do. to get them to stop doing something and start doing something else.
Yes.
And people sometimes lose sight of that, and they think, no, my job is to entertain them. And I think that's a mistake.
But telling a story is a lot different. And we use storytelling in sales. We use third-party stories.
Mm-hmm.
And what we find is, and psychologists will tell us this, and I'm sure you know this, is that people will put themselves into the story.
Right. Right. Well, and the story's not about them, right? And it's if you're selling and you're telling a story, and you putting yourself into it enhances the story, great. But the story has to resonate with the receiver of the story.
Exactly. That's how they put themselves into it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
If they can, yes, I hear what you're saying. Okay,
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
Oh, you thought I meant that the
Like literally
sellers putting that?
Yes.
No. Yeah, I'm talking about
You've got to put the buyer into the story.
Well, you've got to tell a story about maybe a third party, a client of yours that had a great result or whatever. Tell that story, and just like a case study would start with a problem issue, and then a process, then an outcome. And in the same way, in a sales conversation, we talk about the issues or problems that the prospect had, or that the client, we now our new client had. We put them through a process. Now they're getting these kinds of outcomes.
Right.
And when you tell like a third party story, like a case study, the prospect you're talking to about it puts themselves into the story. If they resonate with that issue, right? If they resonate having that issue, or if they resonate wanting the outcome.
Right. Well, and conversely, on the sales side, when we do our discovery, we'll try and identify the pain that they're feeling, so that when we come back to tell a story, we'll find examples of where we've cured that pain, so that they can see themselves in the story. They may not be putting themselves in the story, but I want them, when they hear what we're saying, and it's the same thing for our clients. Their customers should say, they understand me. I want to buy from them because I know they can fix whatever it is that I'm struggling with, because they understand me. They've worked with people who have similar experiences.
Yes.
And they're able to articulate that.
And you help your clients craft and communicate those stories, right? How do you do that?
It starts really with their customers. And so what we try and do is we try and understand the landscape. We want to understand, what does their business look like from the eyes of the customer? What do they do well? What do they not do well? What matters in the marketplace most? What is it that they're looking for? And what we find is, if we can find something that our client does well, that really matters in the marketplace, that's going to be the genesis of the story, assuming that someone else doesn't already own it. We're able to use that as sort of the cornerstone for crafting the story. So, you take a company like Porsche. People would say, Porsches are built very well. They're safe cars. And safety matters. Well, I don't know that I would say the Porsche story should be safety, because you would say, well, Volvo kind of, at least historically has owned that, even though Porsche could claim it.
Yes.
So you try and find the thing that's compelling, that the market really expects and requires, that they own uniquely.
Yeah.
And that becomes sort of the cornerstone.
I would think performance, thrill of the drive.
Thrill of the drive, yeah. But how are they different from BMW? How do they create distinction, right?
BMW really has branded that kind of attitude. Yeah.
And I think Porsche has decided that art and design is the thing that distinguishes them. I mean, they have beautifully designed vehicles. BMWs are beautiful too, but different.
Yeah. I read an article not too long ago about owners of different car types.
Okay.
And BMW owners were the least happy.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
according to this article. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, they cited some study they did, but least happy are BMW owners.
Please tell me that the Yugo was not the highest
I don't remember
satisfaction.
Yugo being on the list. But it's interesting, as soon as I read that, I thought to myself, I will never own a BMW.
Yeah, well, you wonder, and gratuitous plug for my brother, my younger brother wrote a book called The Paradox of Excellence. And the idea is, the better you get, the better you have to get. Because, and perhaps in this case, BMW owners have an expectation that's so high that anything that is below it drives satisfaction down, even though they may have objectively the best car. I don't drive a BMW, so there's no plug for them. But
So you're not unhappy?
no, I'm not unhappy. I'm very happy. My car has 4 wheels and an engine, and it gets me where I need to go.
There you go. That's another interesting thing, right? That some people buy cars like Porsche, BMW, Mercedes because it is a status thing.
Right.
Right. Others buy them because they have great, they keep their value longer or whatever. So, but it's interesting about the people that buy it for the status probably have other kinds of happiness issues, right? I mean,
well,
really,
it could be, yeah. I mean, it's an outward reflection of themselves. Like, I need this so that people think of me in a certain way, as opposed to I need 4 wheels and an engine because I've got to get to the grocery store and to work and what have you.
So these are the kinds of discussions you have with your clients, right? They're customers, in order to start to craft the story, right? And then you pitch that to your client.
So we'll come back and we'll say, here we'll present the research.
Okay.
This is what your clients say about you. This is what your clients say about what matters in the marketplace. Here is where we believe you should plant your flag broadly, right? And so it's just simply, here's the idea.
Okay.
Once we align on that, then it's how do you dimensionalize it, right? And we do things like articulating how they want their customers to think, how they want them to feel, how they want them to act. We craft it in the context of why, what, and how, and sort of stealing a little bit from Simon Sinek and the power of why.
Okay.
But it's why do you exist?
He has a great first name, by the way.
He does have an awesome
really
first
good,
name. Yeah. But it's why do you exist? Why should anyone care that you're here? A lot of clients will start with what? What do? We make widgets. We make cars, whatever it happens to be, and we say why. I know what you do. Why do you do what you do? What does anyone get from what you do? And so there's an articulation of the why, what, and the how of how they conduct their business. And so we translate that into prose, something that they can take and drive in the organization.
Nice.
Because for us, we're a marketing agency. But we realize that everyone is in marketing, right? If you've ever been to a car dealership with a bad service bay, okay, that is marketing.
Yes, it is.
It's marketing.
Yeah.
And so how do you craft a story that you can drive into the organization so that everyone can rally behind it?
I would love to be in the room when you're talking to your client about these things. That must be absolutely fascinating.
90% of the time, they're awesome meetings.
Yeah.
There's about 5%, maybe 10%, where it's, you don't understand us, right? You don't understand us. It's like, well, we understand what your customers, how they understand you.
Yes.
We may not understand the way you think you do. We just understand how your customers understand you.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they give you pushback, then maybe it's just not a good fit. So if 90% are a good fit, that's probably a good number.
We feel very, very good about the success rate that we have.
I'll bet you should. Well, and you mentioned it's mostly B2B. So what other kinds of descriptors would you call your own ideal customer profile?
That's a great question.
I mean, verticals or particular?
Honestly, in the last 6 months, I've worked with chemical manufacturers, manufacturing companies, software design companies. I mean, storytelling is
How about size?
ubiquitous.
Does it matter what size?
We want a company that has some scale. If they're, I'd hate to put a number to it because needs are different.
Right.
But I think, if you are committed to investing in marketing, and not marketing as sales presentations, basically a website and sales presentations, we're probably worth giving a call to.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you start with your customers, but what if they want to break into a new market or they have a new product or service and so there's nobody to talk to yet? How do you handle that?
Well, what you end up doing is instead of talking to their customers, you end up talking to the market. And so you end up mapping the competitive landscape and trying to identify white space that exists in the landscape.
Okay.
Once you find white space, then you have to come back and say, well, does that white space jibe with your story, right? There's a safety play over here, but your performance in this market, well, you'll violate your story if you go to that new market and you play safety, when you're all about performance.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So they could actually ruin their brand and their legacy market space.
Correct.
By trying to branch out into something else in a different way.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example that you may recall. Back in the late 90s, Las Vegas decided that they were going to be family friendly.
I do remember that.
You remember that? And
we all laughed.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, because it violated what happens here stays here, right? And so they put the entire brand at risk, and all the casinos and all of the properties that contribute to the convention bureau there.
Right.
To try and attract young families, which should not be in Vegas,
yes.
right? And so that was them trying to play someplace that they shouldn't be playing.
That's a great example. Yeah. So once again, this is Al Simon with Sandler, and the show is Simon Says Let's Talk Business on Business RadioX, and we're talking with Chris Weissman, Chief Marketing Officer of TopRight, an excellent marketing agency. Ruthless consistency, telling your customer stories with ruthless consistency. I love that. Chris, I'd like to know, and our listeners could probably benefit from this, but what's the best advice you've ever received yourself in your career?
Great question. I think the best advice as a marketer that I've received is to stop contemplating what you want to do and start with the customer. Because it's all about fulfilling their needs. And if you don't understand really what their pain is or what their problem is, not just necessarily functionally, but emotionally too, you're not gonna maximize the value you can create. And so I think thinking about it from a customer perspective versus from a company perspective is probably the best advice that I've given.
It's not about you; it's about your customer. Yeah, very good. And can you share maybe your biggest success you've had in your career?
I've had a very good career. Very proud of what I've accomplished. What I'd rather do, I'm going to pivot you to more personal. I think my personal greatest success is the three amazingly successful and happy and well-adjusted daughters that I have.
Awesome.
Who have gone on to do wonderful things with their lives, and I would point to them as probably my greatest success.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I was talking to one of my clients the other day, who is doing very well in sales, but he constantly feels pressure to do more in his job, right? Do more.
Sure.
But he's got kids at home, and so we talked about that.
It's a tough balance, and I'll say this. Look, I'm far enough into my career, and I've raised kids. Nobody's going to bring the trophy that you won at work to your funeral, right? And there's a balance, and I've seen people who have tilted one way and tilted the other way.
Yeah.
It's a tough line to walk, but I can tell you, there was a point early in my career where it was like, no, I got to get on the road and I got to go do something, and I'm going to miss that soccer game. Yeah. And I reached a point when my kids were in their 8, 9, 10, 11. I just said, I'm not missing a thing, and I don't regret any of it.
Nor should you. To me, it's about priorities, and obviously, each professional has to sit down, eliminate some distractions, and just think about what are my priorities in what order,
right,
and then execute from there. And that's, I guess, the best advice I would give someone. How about you? Best advice you could give somebody?
Personally, I think So two things I'll give you: personal and then business. On the personal, recognize that your life is like a stool. It's a four-legged stool. You've got your family, your friends, your spouse, and your work. Okay. At some point over the course of your life, one of those legs, two of those legs, three of those legs are going to go out. What's the one that you need the most if you only have one leg to stand on? So that would be personal.
Great stuff.
From a business standpoint, I think it's, and I love telling clients this because what it evokes is unbelievable. And I'll say to them, no one cares what you do. No one. You do, but no one cares what you do. What they care about is what they get from what you do.
Thank you.
And so many companies are like, but we do this, and we do this, and we do this. And we'll say, okay, but what do they get from that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea.
Oh, my goodness. This is such good stuff. In sales, you hear a salesperson talk, like if you do a role play with them or watch a sales call. And so often what comes out of their mouth is, I'd love to, right? I'd love to get on your calendar. I'd love to show you how I can save you some money.
Right.
And they don't realize prospects don't care
Right.
what you would love to do.
Right.
It never crosses their mind to my prospects don't wake up in the morning and go, I wonder what Al Simon would love me to do today. It's not something that ever crosses their mind. So why would we say it? Why would we type it into an email? It makes no sense whatsoever. And as soon as you explain that to people, they go, oh, yeah.
Right.
Makes sense.
Right. Well, it changes the way you have a conversation, too.
Yeah.
Because you don't start with you. You don't start from the inside out. You start from the outside in.
Perfect. Chris, thanks for being with us. This is
happy
great.
to be here. This has been wonderful. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Great stuff. Al Simon here with Sandler. Simon Says, Let's Talk Business on Business RadioX. And our wonderful guest has been Chris Weissman, Chief Marketing Officer at TopRight. I almost said ad agency. Don't say ad agency. A marketing agency that gets results for their clients by helping them craft stories told with ruthless consistency. Love it. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so now we'll transition into our show as always with our Ask Al segment. Each show we end it by answering a question from our audience about sales. If you have a question about sales you'd like to have answered on the air, you can email me at al.simon@sandler.com, and you just might find your question being answered here on the air in our Ask Al segment. So today's Ask Al, the question is, what are the best avenues to locate prospects? From our listener, what are the best avenues to locate prospects? Well, okay, so we're talking about prospecting here. Prospecting is the lifeblood of sales. You've got to have opportunities in your pipeline, or you're going to starve in sales. Basically, you got to have them. So you can rely on marketing, to bring in inbound leads. But is that going to be enough? Is that going to be the right ones? Well, if you're working with Chris's company, it would be. But not that many people I work with have the right enough of the right inbound leads. So this listener obviously needs some better ways to get new prospects. And so it says, what are the best avenues? Well, when we say avenues, I'm thinking activity, right? What activities get the best results in terms of putting opportunities on your pipeline? And I would say, start like what Chris says. Start with the customers, your market in mind. I mean, where do they hang out? Where are they? Where do they hang out? So you can think in terms of trade shows, networking, where you can meet people who are in your target market and start conversations, start relationships, and then conversations. But maybe the most important one that a lot of people miss for various reasons is asking your current clients, your current customers, for introductions and referrals. And a lot of people don't like to do that. First of all, they'll think their customers are not going to like it because it, first of all, puts pressure on them, and second of all, maybe they just don't want you going out and selling to their competitors. But that's just a conversation. You can do it right in a way that takes away those two pressures. Other people think that, well, I don't want to look desperate, I don't want to look unprofessional. Again, technique-wise, there's ways to do that where you take that away. The bottom line is most people don't ask enough. They don't ask their current customers, their past customers, their strategic alliance partners. And by the way, another avenue is cultivating great strategic alliance partners, which is people that call on the same folks you do, but don't compete with you. And maybe they're even, in a way, they help you, and you can help them. And so you develop these relationships with people like that, and endeavor to bring them introductions and referrals, and then they in turn bring you introductions and referrals. So I love strategic alliance partnerships, cultivating really good ones. As an example, I've got a client that is a wealth advisor, and he's got several CPA firms as strategic alliance partners, and they help each other, and it's perfect for that. I mentioned networking, trade shows. How about cold calling? How about just straight cold calling? Well, if you've got a good database and you've got a good talk track and you know what questions to ask to open the conversations, and it's not what everybody else says, you got to change the patterns, and that's all the kinds of stuff that we teach our clients if they do cold calling. People say cold calling doesn't work. Other people say cold calling does work. Bottom line is, if you think it'll work, it will work. If you think it won't work, it probably won't work on cold calling. And then, of course, social media, when used right in the right marketplaces, certainly LinkedIn, using LinkedIn correctly. And I've alluded to that before. For our B2B clients that use LinkedIn, please avoid the connect and pitch. Please. It pollutes the water for all of us when you connect and pitch. Connect, build a relationship, and then someday down the road, it might make sense to say, hey, why don't we hop on a call and talk about this? And then you can turn it into more of a sales call. But all of these and more avenues or activities can be in play. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish and where do your prospects hang out. So, hey, look, call me. We'll work through that and figure that out. And that's today's sales tip in the Ask Al segment. This is Al Simon. Thanks once again, Chris Weissman at TopRight. And as always, folks, good selling.